What was the best play stupid games and win stupid prizes incident you've witnessed? Kids in my school used to play chicken, a game where you run out into the road and see how long you can last before running back onto the pavement. Person who did it the shortest amount of time was the chicken. Took a kid dying before people in my school realized it wasn't a smart game. I really hope the driver didn't get into any trouble. Not me, but my brother was returning home from work in the middle of the afternoon on the highway and got passed by a group of idiots on sports bikes doing wheelies and crap. Speed limit was 65 and he was doing the usual 10 over and they passed him like he was standing still, so probably 100 plus mph. About a mile down the road, there's a gentle curve in the highway after a small hill, and when he goes over the hill, he sees all the riders pulled over and like freaking out and huddled around what is obviously a crash. Being that he was, at the time, an off-duty law enforcement officer, he pulls over and walks back up to see if he can help. When he gets back up to them, it's clear that one of the riders lost control of the bike, slid off at an extremely high speed and was literally cut in half by one of the guardrail supports. All the riders were like freaking out and throwing up or just standing there with the 1,000 yard stare. Wasn't really much he could do for the guy, but he called in police and paramedics and stayed there until they arrived. Not sure what happened to the riders, but I guarantee that one died on the scene. It's educational. That will be an important lesson. I saw a man freak out at a Burger King a few years back. He was furious that they had not put BBQ sauce on his Whopper. The employee said they could give him barbecue sauce, but they don't usually put it on the burger for you, and the man began yelling that it was too late and the burger was cold, so the sauce didn't matter, and then he spat at the employee. It just landed on the counter, thankfully, and said, "Get me another effing burger, you retard," and tossed his burger at the employee, half wrapped, ketchup out. A few patrons all moved to intercept, but the employee lashed out before we could do anything, and began grabbing burgers from the warming rack and throwing them at the man, screaming, "You can have as many burgers as you want. Just get the F out of here." The man shrunk and beat out of there super fast. There was a moment of shocked silence, and then everyone began telling the employee it was okay and he shouldn't feel bad and that the guy was a horrible person and such. The manager came and told the employee he could go on break, but didn't look too upset or ready to discipline the kid, so hopefully nothing bad happened afterwards. On a side note, I, and probably some of the other patrons, still feel that I should have jumped in to help the kid sooner, but man did he ever stick up for himself. I'd have been fired so fast for that, but man I bet it felt good. In high school this big guy picked a fight with a small Asian kid who knew self-defense, because he thought his size would make up the difference. Big guy tried to punch the little guy, missed, got punched in the face 3 times, nose started bleeding and he yelled, "I'm done. I'm done," like 10 seconds in LOL. Annoyingly, both kids got suspended 7 days, even though the one kid was clearly defending himself. I broke up a fight between my friend and a very grumpy kid who likely shoulder checked me. Long backstory, we all got suspended. Another friend of mine was shoved into a wall. He didn't even say anything to the offending turd, and still got suspended for fighting. Stuck on 696 outside Detroit. Traffic barely moving thanks to the mix of an accident and summer construction on the lodge. So, normal day, I was in the outside lane, waiting to head south into Dearborn, when an idiot in a Mustang rolls by on the shoulder going 40. He must have made it another 20 or 30 cars past when I heard screeching tires, a crunch, and then a stuck horn. Frick, now I'm really not getting anywhere soon. Everything got better as folks made their way left and around the accident and I saw what happened. Mr. Mustang hit a parked state police car. Instant karma. Got overtaken by a Corsa VXR going at least 90 plus on a 30-mile-per-hour road. I get to drive further ahead for about 20-25 minutes and it's upside down in a ditch, completely totaled and surrounded by police and paramedics. Local thug decided to beat up drug dealer and steal his stash. Drug dealer comes back later, surprises thug at the bar, points a sawed-off shotgun point blank at his chest and fires. Click, misfire. Local thug dives behind bar, gets shot in the butt while scrambling into the bar's walk-in freezer. Drug dealer flees the scene. Half-butt learned that career criminals play by different rules. I had a client who was on very poor terms with his daughter's birth mom. There wasn't much of a relationship. The pregnancy was basically accidental, but he wanted to have a relationship with his daughter, and there was a custody and parenting time order in place. After the daughter managed to injure herself in a car crash during mom's time, mom decided to prevent dad from having any contact with the daughter, including just cutting off all parenting time. She told him, "If you want to see daughter, you'll have to take me to court." So he did, and she proceeded to ignore the court date. So an arrest warrant was issued for her and she ended up seeing the judge in shackles, after which she was ordered to pay dad $5,000 for his legal fees in getting her to court, and she had to provide extra makeup parenting time for what she had withheld. It wasn't the best legal strategy I've seen. Unless your opponent is Uli Tate's, not showing up to court is one of the worst things you can do in life. Another one. A guy on the transit train tried to pick up some girls in some scummy way. Woman comes up from behind him and screams, "How are you gonna mac on these girls if you baby mama right here?" Me, my wife, and the old dude next to us started laughing. My sister and cousin were playing with one of those physical therapy band things, a rubber rope with a handle on each end. They were each holding a handle and seeing how far they could walk backwards. My cousin decided to let go of his end and it snapped back and smacked my sister right in the eye. We were all at my other younger cousin's house for a birthday party, so the whole family was there. Everyone heard my sister shriek and came running in. My sister had some pretty serious damage in her eye. I guess it started to bleed internally and she was at risk of glaucoma. She ended up needing surgery and had to wear an eye patch for most of 6th grade. I punched myself in the forehead and knocked myself out playing with a loop of that stuff. At a local hospital I work at, this patient had the knee replacement surgery. He watched how the nurses and physical therapists worked with him. He was watching them like a hawk. By the end of the first day the patient demanded to go home. He claimed that he could do everything on his own and wasn't taking no for an answer. He signed the proper paperwork stating that he is leaving against medical advice. 3 days later he's in the emergency room with a raging infection at the surgical site. The day he came to the OR would have been the day he got discharged. At work, when the elevators act weird, skipping floors, not leveling out, etc. That means they are about to stop working. I told a co-worker this before he hopped on the elevator. He acted like I was a moron. He said he was going to lunch and to drop it. Sure enough, the elevator got stuck on the 7th floor for about 20 minutes. He looked real stupid when he hopped off the elevator. Points: frequently go home post-op day 1 after a knee replacement, unless he missed doses of antibiotics. Seems unlikely that this caused it. It might have just been bad luck. A while back I was at the Indianapolis Zoo, which is this cool exhibit with gibbons and otters. Now, if you have ever seen a gibbon, they are not that big, but they have crazy long arms. The exhibit is surrounded by a net and at the corner of one side you can sit on a wall near the net. So now there is this family. They are total state fair specimens. Huge in that Midwestern only eat fried foods way. Dressed in their Walmart finest and beet red. One of these kids looks like he is straight from central casting for Dumb Fat Boy. Think the kid from Bad Santa or the German kid in Willy Wonka, but with less diligent hygiene. This boy was just cramming goldfish crackers into his mouth like he was in a contest and sitting on the wall next to the net. And this gibbon comes over and gives him a death stare. And the kid just stops and looks at the gibbon. Then the kid slowly reaches into the box, pulls out a cracker, and waves it at the gibbon. The gibbon slowly reaches his arm out and the kid snatched the cracker back and says, "Stupid monkey." Now gibbons are apes. And I could just see in his eyes that the gibbon was deeply insulted. The gibbon pulls his arm back in the net and goes back to the death stare. The kid puts the cracker back and waves it again. No reaction, just the death stare. So the kid gets closer and starts taunting the gibbon. Again, no reaction. So the kid gets a little closer and a lot louder. Now, the nets are kept up by pretty solid looking posts. And there just happened to be one right between the kid and the gibbon. The gibbon just shoots his arm out like a cobra on M and yanks the kids into the post. It rang like Big Ben. So the kid is on the ground with a huge knot on his head screaming bloody murder, and the gibbon, who somehow managed to get the box of crackers, is just eating them. Real slow, like with the same death stare. It was glorious. Now that's how you write a story. Well done, my friend. My friend wanted to try H, just to see what it was like. 10 years later, he's destroyed his marriage, lost visitation rights to his kid, is basically unemployable, can't afford his own home so he sleeps in his parents' basement, and has to take Suboxone daily just to maintain some semblance of normal. A douche at a bar kept pestering a female bartender as was at once. He kept trying to flirt and when she ignored him he jumped over the counter and tried to touch her. She pushed him on the bar and he smashed his head on some wine glasses. That's a quick way to get your butt kicked in every bar I've ever been in. A dozen guys will always rescue a female bartender. I've seen it when guys try to get physical with their unwanted flirting, and when one idiot punched a bartender, they get beat down every time. Guy shoots and nearly kills a cop in an ambush attack. Luckily only hit one officer but fired tons of rounds at other officers on scene. As they are closing in on him, bad guy jumps a fence with his pistol in his hand. Bad guy shot himself in the head. DRT. The suspect saved the taxpayers a lot of money. My butthole cousin booted one of my goslings across the yard when he was tantruming. This is a grown man, not a child. I just feel like I should say that before someone thinks a small child got too much retribution. My gander and goose, parents to the goslings, only one was their own hatched child, but since their nest of 6 only yielded one live gosling, I bought 3 babies at a flea market so they could have a proper family. One turned out to be a duck, attacked him, knocked him down and severely bruised his testicle to the point he thought it was ruptured. It wasn't. I did not save him until my aunt paid me to. Because he kicked their tiny baby, why shouldn't the parents get to kick his butt? A few months later, he unwisely walked back outside into the yard the geese patrolled. Did you know geese remember humans they like and hate? He knows now, and the babies were grown up enough to participate, except kicked baby, who was never quite right after being booted by the butthole. Kicked baby tended to stagger around like he was drunk but did not have a mean bone in his body, either before or after his mistreatment. He just sat on a lawn chair and watched the avian beatdown. My aunt didn't even bother to pay me to save him that time. I got around to it when I wanted to shut the geese into their shelter once it started getting dark. TL. DR. Don't mess with geese. They can and will frick you up. Mine loved me and still broke a bone in my leg. I ignored them wanting some attention and they, accidentally I hope, knocked me off my porch, which ended with me in a walking cast for several weeks. What a fricking prick, and geese of all things. Does he not know they're the right hand of Satan? I didn't witness it but heard about it from a friend the other day. There was a man-woman duo who would carjack people. The woman would lay on the highway and pretend to be half dead. Then when someone would stop and get out to help, the guy would come steal the car. So this woman was doing this one time, laying right on the freeway with her head basically in direct route of car tires, and a huge semi-truck driver didn't see her and ran over her head. Natural selection and a dash of karmic justice. I was in Paktika. This Afghan National Army dude was wearing this bright red shirt and just standing out in the open while we are taking mortar fire. I asked this CAG dude that was attached with us what the other dude's deal was. He told me the red shirt was to symbolize to the Taliban he was an informant and that he thought the shirt would keep him safe. Right after he said that, a mortar went off behind the Afghan and he got turned into a pink mist. The operator turned to me and said in a complete deadpan, I guess they didn't get the memo. Obviously, I think they were mad that he forgot to add the white circles with a yellow circle right in the center. The wrestling team I was on in college was interesting. One of the last days of my freshman year, a bunch of them decided to have a milk drinking contest in front of the dorms. They put red food coloring in which made it look awful when they all started puking on the sidewalk. Watched a guy try to run from the cops once. He eventually lost control and spun out into a cornfield. At one point they clocked him at 142, charged him with reckless driving, evading arrest and destruction of property, license suspended, car impounded, the whole 9 yards. We went out in the desert to go camping one night. We were all around 18-19 years old. Some people brought ATVs and dirt bikes and everyone was drinking. Well, this dude I didn't know thought it would be cool to hop on an ATV and show off to some girl how cool he would look jumping this thing. This freaking guy cased the landing and somehow managed to get the entire handlebar into his thigh. I'm talking a 6 inches long wound that was 2 inches wide and as deep as anything I've ever seen. You could have reached inside his skin fat and grabbed a handful of his thigh muscle. Someone rushed him to the road where an ambulance met them. If you don't know how to ride, you should show a little respect to off-road vehicles. They can and will frick you up. Alcohol and dirt bikes ATVs should never mix. Great way to frick up your life permanently with a traumatic brain injury or spinal cord injury because of one stupid decision. That video of 2 teens with a fake gun trying to rob a liquor store and then a security officer came in with a gun and shot both of them after they jumped over the counter. The best part was the teens saying it's fake and the officer replying, well, mine is real. Hopefully that conversation happened after the shots were fired. At our local zoo, the husband and I go very often and like to see the little shows and demonstrations they have. One day, we decided to go to the aviary to see the bird feeding. The aviary is like this huge bird cage you can walk through, and yes, birds can land on you. Anyway, during this bird feeding, the zookeeper strictly warns guests not to stick their hands out towards the birds while they're feeding because they will bite. Literally not even 3 seconds after she says that, this girl standing directly in front of us decided to stick her hand out near one of the larger bird's face while it's eating, and gets bit. I didn't see how bad it was, but apparently she was crying and bleeding and had to go to the first aid station. My husband and I just looked at each other and tried not to laugh. The zookeeper stress again how important it is not to reach out to the birds when they're eating. My brother decided to steal a bike. A cop's bike, in front of the police station, right in front of the windows with several cops being able to see him, in a tiny village where everyone knows everyone, despite being well known to the police due to him being under investigation for molesting a 8-year-old girl. My brother was back at home bragging about his new bike. Not 1 hour later, 10 cops were in our living room, handcuffing him. Stupid games. Your brother might be a bit of a douche. Friend of my fiance started dating this dude who was jobless, lived with his grandparents, was in his late 20s, and wasn't allowed access to his own inherited money because his father knew he couldn't be trusted with it. To top it off, he had been in jail, has 2 kids already with different women, probably has mental problems, and is dumber than a box of rocks. She gets engaged within 6 months, she gets pregnant, has a baby, finds out he was cheating on her the whole time, and that he never cared in the first place. The only thing I could do is palm my face and ask why the first 17 red flags didn't send a message. I was working at a post-production office briefly, and heard the story of what had happened to one of the staff, the Friday before. If you aren't aware, it is a general thing in media that on Fridays, clients will order alcoholic drinks. Some places even have a bar for this reason. Of course, that means that the likelihood is that the staff will also end up drinking, and most places are totally fine with that, but there's always one person to ruin it. Apparently, this guy began drinking early, and became very intoxicated in the space of a few hours. He initially disappeared for 2 hours, before coming back and informing his boss he was too drunk to work. Of course, this is not an excuse, so he continued for a while. A few hours later, a head producer found him passed out, face down on the floor of one of the production suites. The next day he was carried in for a chat. Know your limits, people. Oh, man. There was a kid in our high school whose last name was off, so he got called Jack all the dang time. One day, he was sitting by himself at lunch, minding his own business, when this one kid came up and just wouldn't leave him alone, calling him Jack over and over among a myriad of other offensive terms. The kid whose last name was off calmly stood up, looked the other kid in the eye and said, "You don't wanna do this. If you wanna settle it after school, that's fine. But not here. Not now." The bully then shoved the kid whose last name was off, and before anything else happened, I heard the biggest smack of bone on bone in my life. He'd punched the other kid in the face so hard that his cheek caved in and he needed reconstructive surgery. The kid named off went back to eating his lunch like nothing happened while the bully's pathetic cronies dragged his crying butt out of the cafeteria. Sweet, sweet justice. Till that a cheek can cave in if you get punched hard enough. some butthole weaving in and out of pretty close traffic that was still moving pretty briskly. This was on I-10, which is a major freeway with many lanes going in each direction, eastbound around Katy for anyone familiar with the Houston area. The guy wasn't getting very far ahead but clearly thought he was some kind of badass with whatever sports car he was in, and cut multiple people off. But then, right after he cut me off, he cut off the person to the right of me and managed to clip the back wheels of a semi that was to the right of them. Somehow he spun out onto the shoulder without hitting anyone else or causing too much damage to his own car, so I don't think he was physically hurt, but hopefully his ego took a beating. It was the best. Saw something similar in a rush hour traffic in town. Managed to miss 3 lights because he got stuck sideways between lanes and couldn't back away thanks to the other direction being full of cars as well. People didn't like him much. Had a drunk driver locked up looking for bail money, so he drunkenly calls his friend to pick him up. Friend shows up to the PD and drives up onto the walkway, then parks crooked halfway in the parking lot. Halfway up onto the walkway, stumbles out of the vehicle and stumbles weaves his way into the station. We are all inside watching this unfold on the security camera and can't quite believe what we are seeing. As soon as the guy makes it to the front desk, powerful waves of alcohol smell washes over us and proceeds to stink up the place. We're behind bulletproof glass with only a small opening to allow sound to pass through, but you would have thought someone emptied a keg out on the floor the way it smelled. This dumbass drove drunk to the PD to bail out his buddy. WHO had just been arrested for driving drunk. Once the dumbass got to the PD, he was so wasted he couldn't even remember why he was there. We had to tell him. Then we had to tell him yes, he could see his friend, but only briefly on the way to a cell of his own. So then instead of no prisoners to watch, the station officer now had 2 drunk dumbasses to watch. The rest of us were laughing at the absolute absurdity of the situation. Alcohol really does bring out the stupid in some people. I was working in a grocery store in a tiny mall. One of the other places was a karate studio. Punk teenagers loved to come hang out and make problems at this crappy little mall. 3 8th graders, I know their age because my mom taught them, came in and stood outside the studio, making fun of the kids and being generally obnoxious. Daughter's studio was open because it was a full day. Seemed like a ceremony was going on, so it was probably hot. A father noticed the annoying teens and shut the door. They got pee, kept opening the door and taunting the man. Eventually he stepped out and started arguing with them. They all went outside the mall. IDK for what purpose? But as the dad came back in, I saw the ringleader. My mom said he was the biggest punk. Looks OP. Ran in, jumped on the man's back. Man dipped his shoulder. Kid flew off and slammed his face on the ground. Broken glasses. Teeth smashed. Wonderful justice. Police were called by his family. I was allowed to leave work early to make a statement as I saw the whole thing and I knew he might be fricked. It went to town court eventually. He got off. I had to speak in front of the judge. Interesting experience. In my city there is a bridge that is notorious for accidents because people don't look when they merge and go too fast. This bridge isn't a highway or anything. Today on my way to work I passed an accident with 2 cars, rear-ending. The first car almost went over the bridge and the second one was demolished. Nobody died but there were injuries. The woman was stupid enough to go way too fast on the bridge and won the lovely prize of whiplash and a total car. Long story, but I was at a weird redneck thing in Upper Wisconsin. A local event where they raced snowmobiles over a lake in summer. As long as you keep top speed you make it and can make the cross. It wasn't that long of a cross either. One guy tied himself down and flipped and nearly drowned. Everyone stood around waiting for him to come up too, and it was a slow reaction. Everyone was drunk on top of it. Very weird. Something this out of downer didn't get. Your version of a long story is shorter than most people's TLDR. I live in the Bay Area and saw a short drunk dude in Oakland get into it with a tall stone sober hood dude outside of a bar and then proceeded to get knocked out. Yeah, what the frick did you think was gonna happen when you got in his face and called him and butthole there, man? Guy tried to pull a dine and dash. Tripped halfway down the block. Waitress was hot on his heels. Jumped on his back. Sucker punched him in the back of the head and grabbed his wallet out of his back pocket. If I recall correctly, she gave herself a 25% tip when she used his credit card to pay for the bill. His wallet was then returned to him and he slunk away pretty quickly. Yikes. If you take this literally, the most stupid game I know is this contest where the contestants chase a head of cheese down a hill. Many get injured. The prize? The cheese everybody is chasing after. Stupid and reckless. Are the Cooper's Hill cheese rolling? And must see for anyone. Hilarious, dangerous, and a centuries old tradition. That's why people keep doing it. In 2014 a woman broke her neck and severely injured her spine, but returned again in 2017 to attempt to complete the race again. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.